that wants to keep you sedated, average, and stuck in place. Join us for the tools and strategies you need to create a life of abundance, discipline, and high achievement. This is the Tactical Empire with Jeff Smith.
Welcome to another edition of the Tactical Empire. Today I'm here with my man Ki Bayruether, and I can't wait for you guys to get an intro to this guy. The other day I was at the gym. This is a true story. I'm sitting there lifting weights. This guy sends me a text message out of nowhere, and it is a he's a member of our Inner Circle group. So he's part of the Tactical Empire Inner Circle. And he sends me a 1-minute message from none other than Ted Nugent, wishing Merry Christmas to the Inner Circle. And so imagine my surprise when I'm sitting there and not thinking about Christmas at all. And he shoots me a video text, and it's actually personalized to us. And, from Ted Nugent, which was hilarious. But it's par for the course in my relationship with this guy over the last year and a half, and I never know what to expect from him. He's literally one of the most thoughtful gentlemen I've ever met. So, Ki, welcome, man.
Yeah,
welcome.
Thank you. Happy to
I
be
appreciate your time. Tell us about what you do, because I am fascinated. I know you're a consultant and in the packaged goods space, but what you do and who you consult for is fascinating. You don't have to share any like non-disclosures or anything. I know you're super top secret, but tell me more about that.
Yeah. So let me start with my background, because I think it'll put it in context. I went to culinary school right out of high school. So I trained to be a chef, learned how to cook. After that, I went to school and studied business, and then worked as a negotiator for IBM, Applied Materials. And then when the dot-com bust happened, I went to work for Safeway, a grocery store. And I developed or negotiated contracts for private label products for them. So if you walk into a store and you see an Albertsons brand or a Safeway brand, depending on the categories, those were products that I worked on. And so I did that for 10 plus years, and I did it for Safeway, I did it for Whole Foods, I did it for Tesco, which is like the third largest retailer in the world. And I learned, I controlled billions of dollars of their money. And I learned a lot about how to commercialize products and build supply chains across the United States. And so probably 13 years ago, a lot of CPGs, were approaching me to say, hey, you've got a skill set that we don't have in our business. Can you help us either generate new revenue streams or make the revenue streams that we have more profitable? And so over the past 13 years, I've worked with hundreds of companies, lots of celebrities. I think, some of the most recent launches, I just launched ice cream with the wrapper E40 here in Walmart in California under the Goon with the Spoon brand. We launched ice cream for Netflix under the Scoops Ahoy brand, which is the Stranger Things TV show. We launched entrees with Gordon Ramsay. I mean, it just goes on and on. And so I'm basically, I always joke and refer to myself as Dr. Phil, because you go into these companies and you kind of, there's like, if it's like a family-owned business, everybody's bipolar and unstable, and you got to try and bring some stability while they're gambling their money. And then if they're very large companies, like $1 billion+ companies, they're usually very siloed. And so sometimes I'm just trying to bring together 4 different departments to work on one project.
Yeah.
To get it across the finish line.
That's amazing. I'm sure you've done some interesting things. We have a really good friend out in LA, Dennis Morales, who is a chemist, and he is I don't even know what he calls himself, for lack of a better term. He's actually just a scientist that develops these drinks
Mhm.
And so he's worked with like some of the biggest name rappers and everything else. I mean, he's
Mhm.
done tequila all the way down to like Starbucks contracts for like
Mhm.
what their shit tastes like.
Mhm.
And the whole process is fascinating. And so I'm sure you guys work hand in hand with similar people,
Yep.
um, rolling out product lines and things like that. So, um, what is the most, what's the most challenging thing about taking a project that is of that size?
There's always time pressure, so basically somebody will come to me and say, we want to launch novelties, popsicles. And, I'll go scour the United States, identify everybody that has popsicle manufacturing capability, and then work with a formulator or food scientist like your buddy, and get those formulas, go out and bid the business, and try to produce something that is equal to, the quality that they want. The challenges are, the retailers set a date on when the product needs to be in the warehouse and when it needs to be in the store, and you cannot miss that date. And some of the other challenges is there's always somebody that wants to add more stuff that makes the product cost too much, so it's not economical. Like, nobody's going to make money the more sprinkles or variegates or inclusions that you add to it. And
Sure.
so those are typically the challenges, like getting people to give you their undivided attention and getting them, to get it done on time.
Sure. So your background includes like everything with regards to logistics and all of that.
Yeah.
So
So
shipping.
when I was a retailer, I basically had a team of quality assurance people. So they would go in and audit the facilities, make sure they're safe, have supply chain teams that would do the reordering and, make sure inventory is wherever it needs to be, product developers, marketing, and so you basically you try to be the glue to hold everybody together to get stuff across the finish line.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So how does that skill set apply? Let's say I'm a medium mid-sized business or like under $10 million a year. What do you like? How do you bring value there? Obviously, that's not who
Yeah.
you consult for, but like I'm sure that I mean you can condense this knowledge into
Yeah.
something that could benefit small to medium sized businesses. Correct?
Yeah. I basically view it as there's three revenue streams. So there's the large companies that want me to commercialize products and take them across the United States. Mid-sized companies, could be 10 million in revenue to 100 million in revenue. They have me manage brokerage teams across the United States to do sales management to get the products in the stores. And then
So
I
that
have,
that's product placement, end caps, and things like that.
or even just
View.
like, yeah, even just, there's different broker networks that service different channels in the country, be it a club channel like Costco or a discount channel like Walmart or the natural channel like Whole Foods and Sprouts. And
Okay.
so I have broker networks that all manage to get their products placed in those stores. And that's kind of like my mid-tier customer. And then my emerging brand customer, sometimes they're pre-revenue. And a lot of this is coaching. This is like, let's pick one market in the United States. We're going to find some anchor tenants. We're going to get you a distributor. We're going to work through the economics. And then we're going to try and, basically demonstrate a good velocity in stores so that you can build something that's sustainable.
Gotcha. And then what was the third tier?
Yeah. Yeah. First is like emerging brands,
Right.
very low revenue, mid-tier revenue, which is sales management across the country. And then the third tier is full on commercializing products.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's awesome, man. You also have a passion for the school system. You have two children that are
Oh, yeah.
13 and 14, and you and I kind of chop it up all the time on the public school system and where we're at in the world of education. And so like let's dive into that and what
Yeah.
got you interested in that. I mean,
Oh,
outside of just obviously an interest in your children.
well, I got to put it in context, like I grew up in Oakland, California, right? Single mom, 5 kids, like walked myself to school very young. Didn't really, I think I got kicked out of school in 7th grade and then made it back in 9th grade. and just barely graduated with my class. And so, I went to culinary school, I went to college, but I was always an entrepreneur. Like I was the kid selling now and laters and Cokes out of his locker, for money. And my wife, on the other hand, is assistant chief of pediatrics at Kaiser. She went to Stanford for 13 years. And I was a D student. I was a lacrosse player, punk kid, living in a fraternity house, but knew how to hustle, knew how to be an entrepreneur. And so, my kids have gone to private Catholic school their whole life. It is a substantial bill. It's $5,000 a month for 2 tuitions at, Premier High School here in LA. And it's fun for them. They like to go and see their friends. But I think it was Matt Boudreau who really sent me off on this path of, but are they really learning what they need to, Yeah. And what is the point of this school system? Well, and I'll tell you, I see it all the time. If I'm at I meet a lot of wait staff because I go to a lot of restaurants and meet a lot of kids that are in, 20 to 30 years old that are basically directionless. They've gone through college. They've spent, they've got $100,000 in student loans. They're like, I'm not sure what I want to do. And so that is what really drives me to, not only try and mentor those kids because there's somebody did it for me, but also to try and create experiences for my own kids. And so that they are getting a skill set that's relevant versus just going on this blind path to study to be an engineer or a psychologist or whatever they want to do. That is probably going to lead to, them spending all the money that we've saved for their college education and not getting a return on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and to even extrapolate it further, like you think about your kids and you saw like red flags with what they were doing, and they were in some of the top, quote unquote, top private schools in the country. So for me, I think about like, I went through public school when I came up. I went to some private school early on and then ended up in public school. Nothing wrong with it where I was at because it was small town, like everybody it was just normal. But you have to always think about the, like, not the lowest common denominator for lack of a better term, but like what kind of education are they getting when it's not $60,000 a year to pay for the tuition, of course.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've got a mess in the education system. There's no question about it. I live in Houston. We've got one of the largest school districts in the country, in Harris County school district. We pulled our kids out of school and homeschool, which is what led to a lot of you and I's conversations, obviously. I mean, I share the same sentiment. They're not being prepared for life, and it seems like this point, and they're just cycling the children through it like a factory system, if you will.
Yeah.
And what pops out on the other side is not a free thinker or the thing that's most interesting to me about it is, like, I was never built for college. I went to college. I did a lot of classes. I wouldn't do any of the required courses, which is why I have 0 degree, because I wouldn't do like the basic, whatever those are called, that you have to do to get through there. Cause I couldn't conceptualize doing courses and paying for courses that I didn't want to do or see a need for doing them. And my wife, similar story, like 12 years of college, PhD, multiple master's degrees, everything was paid for. She was a scholarship, academic scholarship at every level. And so she didn't come out with all the student loans, but it was interesting because, like, it's caused us to kind of take a step back and look at everything. And what I see more than anything is the fact that, like, college was built to be this, like, place, environment, a sandbox to challenge thoughts, right?
Mhm.
And you were supposed to go there to challenge everything, and now it's just become such a monotonous group think. Like, if you do not think this way when
Yeah.
you pop out the back end, you're not going to graduate, essentially.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, my wife is very pro school, you
Yeah.
know, and we have some pretty spirited debates about the future. And I don't think she appreciates me saying to the kids, well, you can take a year off after high school and, you don't have to go, I learned a trade. I spent 10,000 hours in a kitchen training.
Sure.
And so I always had, I can still do that.
Yeah.
And so you think about the 10,000 hours that these kids spend in the school, and, unless they're doing a very specific topic, sometimes they leave and they're not better off than when they went in. And I can't remember, I don't know if it was Matt or if it was that guy, Gatto, who wrote that book, Weapons of Mass Instruction, where he talked about from the age of 13 to 18, the amount of wasted time. These, I can see it in my son. He's bored to tears. He's like,
Yeah.
God, I don't want to go. And so to me, that is really the challenge, And so, like, I'm building this, new company to buy affordable housing. And I've said to the kids, you have to buy your own house.
Yes.
And so as I'm writing the 2024 plan, a lot of that family objective is like, how do I get them in the fight at 13 and 14 years old so that they, they have experience,
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things that public school misses is, like, it's a one size fits all model. And, like, boys and girls are vastly different in their learning styles, in their emotional control, like, all of it. I mean, it's so interesting. And I didn't know all this before we had a bunch of kids. And,
Mhm.
like, we've got girls and boys. So I get to sit there on a daily basis and watch the variety in which they approach each day and behave and absorb knowledge. And, like, some of it is personality based and some of it is gender based, 100%.
Mhm.
And, like, you can't argue with me having that most boys probably shouldn't go out and, like, obtain a tradesman background from, like, 16 to 20, because they have no idea what they should be doing. They should be electricians, plumbers,
Yeah.
and, like, anything like that from
Yeah.
16 to 20, like journeyman apprentice, like, grab that. They could own their own company by the time they're 25
Yeah.
easily. I mean, I have friends that do 5, 10, 25, $35 million in those spaces now
Yeah.
at scale.
Yeah.
But, like, you can be doing that by your mid 20s. And, like, to your point about acquiring a skill, it's never lost.
Mhm.
Like, if at 20 they decide they want to go to college or do something
Yeah.
else, they still have that diesel mechanics background or whatever it is, right? And there's just a lot to be said about that. Like, I kind of experienced both and dipped my toe in a bunch of different directions. I was in college for a while, played football for a while, then moved back to a bigger college town and got a job that was actually a really good job when I was 19. So I had money and lived in the college town and
Mhm.
didn't have to go to college, which
Yeah.
I thought was the best of all worlds.
Yeah.
And so, but but looking at the scope of things, I think there's better ways to do things. And if I knew I could have prepared myself for, like, business ownership and the trajectory of being, like, 2 or 3 steps away, which is all those, like, those plumbers and electricians and mechanics and things like that, they really are only 2 or 3 positions away from true business ownership. And it's not as daunting as they think it is. And so, I mean, it's hard to argue with the numbers now, especially being in real estate and investing and knowing how much everything costs, and trades are at a premium now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're paying numbers that I've never seen in my life. Like,
Yeah.
I read something the other day about like normal trades are coming in somewhere between 75 and $125 an hour nationwide right now. So like when you look at that versus a financial services cubicle job, which is what I did, like I thought I was making money, but I wasn't making $125 an hour.
Oh yeah.
And you go out there and do a little bit of work and you can make that money, and age doesn't matter at all.
Yeah, not to mention all the benefits of being self-employed, being free time, all the tax benefits, all the different ways that you can take advantage of that. And I try to break down for my kids, like we have gardeners and we have a pool guy. And I'm like, there on our cul-de-sac, there are 13 houses, and every one of us are using that gardener. Every one of us are using that pool guy. Like in this little cul-de-sac, you could be making money right now,
Yep. 100%. I didn't have that type of guidance when I was growing up because no one gave me that type of mentorship or like push to understand what was going on. And I wish they would have, because I mean, honestly, and to sound like a dumb redneck, like there's nothing better I would have preferred to do at 18 to 20 years old than have a fucking brand new truck and $100,000 a year job and, kind of make your own hours too. Because it really is as fast as you can get through the jobs. It's a production-based system, which is where I thrive. And that's what I love about watching my kids go through homeschooling is we set it up in a production-based method, meaning that like my wife writes their curriculum on Sunday, and if they want to do it all Monday, they're done for the rest of the week.
Yeah.
And I was adamant about it working that way, because the biggest misconception I think people have about homeschooling is they pull their kids out of school and then they try to model school.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that at first. My wife tried to have structured days where it was like 8 a.m. we're going to start school and 2 p.m. we're going to end school. And she tried to go that method. And like what we found over time is that like that's just entirely unnecessary. So most people that think they can't homeschool are wrong because it doesn't take the time that you think it takes.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if we ever had this conversation, but I reached out to Matt Boudreau after I met him through the Agogi and sent him messages through like Instagram or something like that. And he wrote back almost immediately. And I was asking him like, hey, I'm really concerned about my kids and making sure that they are getting the education that they need. And I want to chat with you about like some kind of supplemental education, because my wife will not let me take them out of school. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
And in like less than a minute, like he shut me down so fast. Like he's like, your thinking is wrong. You're thinking, you're still doing school and they're so busy doing school. They will never have the time to do the stuff they need to do. And it's like, I don't know if you've ever had somebody speak to you and it's just like such an absolute truth that it stings, and it took him less than a minute to just help me open my eyes to what I really need to do to get them ready. And so, I didn't have parents that taught me stuff. I did have mentors. I had great mentors that were chefs or business people that helped me. And, a large part of what drives me is doing everything for them that I didn't get.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
That's why I'm passionate about identifying kids that are just like directionless, because like that was me. I was just a ball of energy with seemingly some potential, but zero direction or zero guidance. I mean, like if I didn't play sports, I would be in jail. There's no question. Yeah. And I probably wouldn't have a 5th grade education because I would have no reason to go to school ever. Yeah. And I went to school so I could play all the sports. So that was
well, it. What I will say to you, Jeff, is that your curriculum is amazing. Like I'm 48 years old. I find great value in it. And it really, week on week, it really helps to, be a reminder of what we need to be working on. But also, provide context of what those directionless kids need to be working on too.
Yeah.
And so, I know a lot of the people in the inner circle are older, but I could see 120-year-olds needing to go through this as well.
Well, I mean, it really is like the personal development journey that I went on really reinvigorated my passion for learning ultimately. Because I mean, I was a ferocious reader growing up, and then I ditched it all. Like, I don't know what grade, very young, second or third grade or something like that. And then that just wasn't my persona for a long time. And so when I was able to be reintroduced to like business education and then personal development, it was just like a light bulb turned on for me. And I dove in head first because I was like, this is it. Because I mean, I've always had like so many unanswered questions. Like none of our conventional shit makes any sense to me, and it never has. And so I'm just like, which is why I've always kind of bucked authority and done whatever I wanted to do, which caused me a lot of headaches and a lot of problems and getting in trouble with the law and everything else. Right. I'm also a huge believer, though, that it put me in places that I was in alignment with. Like being in special operations, you're surrounded by guys who like despise authority. And the reason that they're in special operations is because they couldn't be in the regular service, because the regular service is mundane, like rule following, cookie cutter, stay in the box. And like that was our escape. Get into special operations so that you can have your autonomy to do what you want to do, because you're in this elite select group. They just let you run your own shit to an extent.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I definitely think there are a lot of, I mean, like I said, I see it in my son where he's just existing. He's not, like he's a straight A student, but it's not what he wants to do, you know? And so, yeah, no, I think I mean, like I said, man, you're a great resource and I appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I've spent a lot of time and hours and just a lot of education and money, let's be honest, honing my craft. Everything I've built and all the structures that I implement for you guys, like they weren't originally mine. They're models of somebody else's for the most part. I mean, some of the stuff I build myself, but I don't think people talk about self-awareness as much as they need to. And I think that's one of the biggest things plaguing our male society right now is like, there's all these little 30 to 40-year-old man boys walking around that have never really done the work. Cause I was that guy. I'll be honest. Like I came from a traumatic background and like, I just suppressed all of it and moved on through my 30s and like never really took the time to identify my problems. I thought I could out earn them. I thought I could outwork them. And ultimately you can't. And the more you understand that it's really not it was also a realization that there's really no finish line to what we're doing either. Like I had set all these goals, like become a millionaire before I'm 40, do this, do that. I did all that shit. And then I was just like, well, this really isn't the end of what it is. And so just gaining a little bit of wisdom and understanding that it really is like, this is all it is. Like it's you and me, it's this conversation, it's the process and it's the daily checking of the boxes that leads to fulfillment. And then foundationally is where you find that freedom and that purpose. And so like, it is your discipline. It is your mental health. It is your family. And like everything that matters is kind of underneath your roof. And you're out there chasing all these extrinsic ideas and dollars and things like that. And so it's just very interesting because it's funny because you talk about these things for decades and you're like, man, I was only missing the mark by 1%. Because like I've been a big guy on mortality for 20 years. I mean, I watched a lot of people die. I've done a lot of things. And so the fact that the timer could run out at any moment in time has always been something that's very real to me. Now the level of awareness and the heightened level of awareness that you can get to where you realize like how do you connect to like the universe and fucking God or whatever you believe in, source energy. Like now that stuff is very interesting to me at this point because I believe in all these energy fields and like we're just atoms being jarred around. You know, the weird shit I talk about sometimes, but but it really is like you are just a little speck of dust in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And so we get too wrapped around our own feelings, our own ego, like, and we worry about not seizing our potential because of the ideas or the thoughts of other people. And when you really can extrapolate your thought process to how insignificant you are, it allows you to understand how insignificant those thoughts are and those people are. So, but my purpose, man, like in my realization for what I'm doing with the group has always, it really is about making better husbands, better fathers,
Yeah.
and making a lot of money so that you can make an impact in your community. Because like, I haven't always been a great husband. I haven't always been a great father, but that was my mission my entire life. Like, right. Like
Yeah.
for ever since my dad left when I was little, like that was my focus, I thought, but I didn't have the tools to do it. And I didn't have the tools to be the man that I wanted to be. And so it's a constant evolution and chipping away at myself, man.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's incredible, like when you get to that realization, what a sense of urgency it can create for you on how to live every day and make sure you are getting the most out of it.
That's why I get so excited when like 20-year-olds join the group, because I'm like, holy fuck, dude. Like, you're so far ahead. If you can grasp a tenth of this shit, you're going to go to the moon, man, in every area. And so like that part is really fun to me. But you, man, you've had a huge transformation. You've lost what, 60 pounds in the last year?
Yeah. 50. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I did 100 push-ups last 2 days in a row. Like I'm part of the Agogi, so the training schedules change and I'm in between schedules. And so, but man, doing 100 push-ups was like unfathomable, you know, at one point. But in all areas, you know, not just like fitness, you know, and I've always been a big reader too, but, you know, in the relationship with the family and kind of the impact that my fitness transformation has had on the family, and, you know, or reading like what would the Rockefellers do, and learning how to set up those systems and setting up those systems, not just for myself and seeing bank accounts grow much faster just through that discipline, but also setting them up for my kids already and funding them already. And just basically saying to them, okay, I am building a bank for you. You know, I mean, for years, I put all this money into your education. What a waste. I should have been putting it into this bank.
Yeah.
And, you know, and just like when I go out there and walk them with the dog, say, hey, okay, this is the topic that we're going to talk about today. I know you might not find it fun, but you got to learn for the long-term plan. Or, you know, there are so many aspects that have changed in such a short amount of time.
I love
and
that.
I remember our first conversation. You were like, man, in 3 years, you're going to be a very different person. And it's very true. It is very true.
Well, I mean, I think the thing that I am so impressed about by you is that like you're seizing the responsibility. And I think that ultimately that's what every man out there needs to do, and understand that like you have a teenage son, right? He's at a tipping point. Like, are you going to get off your ass and actually be an impressive human being so that he can respect you and like model his life after you? Or is he going to look elsewhere for models?
Yeah.
And I think as a father, like, that's a question we should all ask ourselves, right? Like, are your kids going to have to look externally for models because you are just a guy who half-asses everything?
Yeah.
And like, you are turning yourself into the model for your son, that he can look at you as the guy he wants to emulate, right? And I'm not sure that a year ago or 2 years ago he would have chose you, right? He'd have been like, oh, you're
fair statement.
Yeah.
It would have been somebody on Minecraft or whatever video game he's playing, you know,
right.
in that community. And it's, I mean, we definitely have a very engaged family, you know, where I'm very close to my son, my wife's very close to our daughter, and you know, we're working on relationships with each other, and we spend a lot of time together. I mean, you see the Instagram, like I take these kids everywhere and try to create experience after experience after experience for them, you know, and document it so that they know like, yeah, life was pretty good. Life was pretty good.
Sure. Sure. That's the biggest. Tell me that. Let's talk about that a little bit. Because you and I mean, we came from humble beginnings. Our children are growing up completely differently,
Mhm.
right? And like, that's what I laugh about with my wife all the time. I'm just like, I don't have any idea what we're doing with regards to that.
Mhm.
Because, like, talk about everything being foreign. Like, these kids have never known any different. They've never known
Oh yeah.
not having abundance in
Oh,
every
yeah.
area.
Yeah, I
They've
always
never
tease like
known.
hardship is when I turn off the Wi-Fi, you know?
Right? And so, but again, like, I feel like you can use yourself as the model for that. Like, we have to manufacture hard things.
Yeah.
When I lost my way after the military and like transitioning and doing what I was doing, it was because I got complacent and I stopped seeking hard things to do. I stopped challenging myself either physically or mentally. And it's not good for my mental health. It spirals me out of control. So like I'm sure most people are just walking around like zombies
Yeah.
and like, what the fuck am I doing? But I think your kids need to understand that same model. They need to seek out hard things. So now we're all in this new era of like cold plunges and punish yourself with these different physical challenges, but they work. They do work and they do grow mental fortitude. And like I can go back to like days of military training of what we did and like how they set up selection processes to make us quit. What were I mean, when in doubt, model the people who spend the most amount of money creating a result and like, oh, okay. So you need to crawl through shit in really cold weather while you're wet and have been awake for a really long time. Okay, like that will harden your mind, right? And and so
Well,
you go ahead, sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, like, the amount of people that just exist and don't set goals for themselves is tremendous. And so, like, before we started this conversation, I told you, like, I'm working on the 2024 plan. And part of it is the curriculum for the kids,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know?
which is going to be huge. That'll be awesome.
So, yeah, I'm definitely curious about your transformation, coming out of the military, joining, civilian life again, for lack of a better term. How much of where you're at today was the need to like create a new mission for yourself, or you know like talk to me about that transition that you went through.
Um, I'm a big, I I don't know. I think that for me, I came out of the military. I had 6 months to report to my job. I had a job being held for me at a financial services company that if I came back within 6 months of my transition out of the military, they would hold a job for me. Right. I went back in like 6 days. I went to work in like six
Mhm.
days. I took no time. I flew back to Illinois, took my shit, got an apartment, and went back to work because like that's all I really know. Like my cycle of life is just work yourself to the fucking bone. Like that's
Mhm.
what I was trained to do. Suppress anything. Like, and I don't mean in the military necessarily. The military kind of just built upon
Yeah.
how I was built as a child, which was like you suppress everything. Don't worry about it. You go to work. You do what you're supposed to do, and do it again. And like that is how I was built. And so for me, coming out of the military, not addressing anything, I'm like, yep, I'm good. Next, and went straight into work. And I don't even think the military was my problem, or not dealing with any of my shit was my problem at that point in time. My problem was the mundane world that I entered into, which
Mhm.
was the Groundhog Day, which is the corporate world
Oh,
where
yeah.
whatever you do or whatever you deliver on is irrelevant. So, like, I'm getting the same 6 or 7% raise no matter what. When they review me, I'm getting a bonus that slides roughly 2% in like what they're giving me. And the same shithead that sits next to me that didn't do anything or doesn't even come to work, he got the same bonus I got. And so it just is soul stealing. And unless you can figure out how to formulate like that's meant for you, I don't know. I was just not engaged in that environment. They tried to be like, hey, Jeff, you have a lot of leadership qualities. Let's track you for a leadership role. You need to go and be part of these organizations, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, okay, I'll do some of that stuff. It was extracurricular. It was within the corporation, right? I will tell you the number one thing I did within that job, and what I would recommend all like directionless 20-year-olds get a job at a big corporation, because their R&D or their L&D budgets are massive. Learning and development, you can take course after course. That's where all my financial services knowledge really was built, the baseline of it, because I took all these like financial services, CFP, like certification type courses while I was there. Series 6, Series 7, we dabbled in all the entry level shit for that stuff. I never went out and got licensed and did that because I didn't want to pursue that direction, but I did take all the courses within the curriculum for that type of stuff. And you don't have that opportunity if you go out and start your own business. You don't have that opportunity working for a small business, because they don't have L&D budgets that are like that. And so like that's a huge thing. So I don't want to get off course there, but like there were benefits to that corporate job. But what it did was I had a propensity to just be like, okay, I kind of mailed it in, if you will. I achieved very highly, but like put the minimal amount of effort into it. And then it didn't, because there was no fruit to it. Because I could put maximum effort into it and the fruit was the same as minimal effort. And I recognized that very quickly. So like next thing you know, I was off drinking at 2 p.m. every day and hanging out at the bar effectively. And then I was like, man, this is terrible. And like most of these guys that are in here, like no offense if anybody's listening to this, but are 20 years older than me, and they're doing the same thing, that they have the same job I have, and they're 20 years ahead of me. So like, is this my path? And kind of, it goes back to like kind of what we talk about shrinking your circle. And like, you have to, once you want to level up, you've got to leave a lot of those things behind. And for me, it was a move that got me out of that environment. We came to Texas so that my wife could do her PhD at Rice. And so then I started telecommuting. I still worked for the same company. And that put me around a different group of people, which was tremendous for me. But I mean, I ebbed and flowed mentally throughout that entire time. The move to Texas was one of the hardest parts, because I was never around anybody. I never really left the house because I worked out of the house. And so from there, I opened a gym and kind of, we owned real estate. I was actively real estate investing while I was working that job in Illinois. And so like, I was always pursuing other shit, like side hustles and things like that, which I wish I would have focused more on, obviously, at that time, but it was what it was. But then like somehow, and I think this is like the catalyst of what led me to you and everything else, is like, I always had a propensity to hire mentors and coaches. And like, I always wanted speed and leverage and contacts and connections. I didn't want to ever recreate the wheel. And so that day job I had allowed me to go out and pursue these other things. And then I had the cash to hire coaches that were able to kind of like, because everybody's like, the coach is supposed to set the path for you and give you the blueprint. I really was hiring coaches to figure out really quickly whether I would fucking hate something or not. Like, hey man, you've been in this space 20 years. Tell me all the shit that's going to be horrible. And like, and then I can gauge whether that's for me or not for me. Right. And so I just wanted to make a decision very quickly and get off of like, maybe. And so, but that's always been like ingrained in my DNA. I've always been joining groups and buying coaches and getting mentorship. because there's people out there doing better things than you. And that was one thing I recognized very early on somehow. I don't know how, but like surround yourself with people that have the things that you want and are doing the things that you want to be doing and have the life like you want to model, and like go be around them and then take notes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of similarities, man, in terms of the drive. And I don't know, like, I hated corporate life. I was always a top performer, but I wouldn't wear my tie, and they hated me for it. Like, I was in trouble all the time. I was like, but I put $80 million in the bank for you, I'm going to show up at 9. That's just how it's going to be. And, but I think that some people that is their DNA, to be, that they got to plot their own course,
Yeah. You've got to mentally be prepared for the corporate world. Cause if you get off track and start like being like, why the fuck are we here for these meetings? You will drive yourself crazy, because meetings are all you do. And if you don't have the right mindset for it, like, you can really sabotage yourself in that environment. And so most of the people I saw in that environment handcuffed themselves to those jobs through upgrading their houses, upgrading their cars, getting a new BMW, getting the next series BMW, and like next they've got those golden handcuffs on and they can't make it 2 months without that paycheck. And like, that was their downfall.
Yeah. Slavery.
So
what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's no different than that, for sure. And people just don't recognize and it's a lot of self-belief, right? And then crabs in the bucket. Like, if you're the riskiest son of a bitch in the world if you're gonna go out on your own and do something. And like, you'll never make it. And I'm not saying it's easy to make it on your own. It's definitely hard as hell. There's definitely a lot of setbacks, but it's freeing. And if you're built for it, like, if you have the right personality for it and you can avoid what people say, like, it's the best place you could possibly be, because everything is on your shoulders, and which is what I love personally.
Yeah. Yeah. It's living. You just definitely feel alive. That's for sure.
Well, Kai, we're running long. We could talk all day, I'm sure, but tell me where people can find you.
I've got a website called grow-llc.com. You can see about my business there. You can find me on Instagram at 650 Kiowa. And thank you for the journey, Jeff, and really appreciate your time.
Oh yeah, man. The next few years are going to be amazing, for sure. Do you get a bunch of weed comments on your website?
No.
That's grow-llc.com. I was like, wonder what that comes up as in SEO. So.
Yeah. That's good. Oh, it's definitely, the industry's full of it now. Everybody wants to put it in everything. So
yeah, there you go. There you go. You're ahead of the time. Somebody's going to buy that domain from you
hopefully.
Well, thank you for your time, man. I appreciate your candor. And as always, man, I truly do appreciate you as a human. And like, you're the kindest, gentlest person in the world. And I really love being associated with you. And I'm looking forward to watching you build that portfolio this year. And it's going to really change everything for you and your family.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate you.
Talk soon, bro.